Nerd on the Podcast is proudly partnered with Apogee Electronics and Odyssey Headphones, leaders in the field of audio.
Everybody, how do they measure up?
Meryl Streep.
Meryl Streep.
Yeah, she could be Batman. It'd be the right choice. Take the wheel, baby.
I think I want to keep that for the top of the episode.
Corey, take the wheel.
Thank you. So, as you just heard, I'm Corey Nathan, proud to be a part of the Alliance for Entertainment Advertising Arts, co-produced by DG Entertainment, presented by Clio Entertainment, and very thankful to David Munzer and Gary Forbes, our awesome engineers back at DG. By the way, if you like the show, please tell a friend about it, share it, subscribe, leave a review, and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And today's guest is Corey Nathan. No, actually, we're doing something a little different today. I have two of the hosts from a great podcast called Nerd On, Joshua Manley and Tom Borisouth. Did I get that right?
You killed it. You're one of a very few select people that have actually gotten it the first try. Pat yourself on the back.
Oh, yeah, baby. Feeling good about myself. So in addition to being really talented and accomplished podcast producers, Joshua is an audio mixer who's worked at a couple shops in our industry, Trailer Park, Buddha Jones. And Tom is an award-winning director. So we'll start by getting to know these interesting, crazy cats, and then we're going to switch gears and have Tom and Joshua put on their host hats with me as their guest on Nerd On. So it'll be kind of like a geeks versus nerds kind of a thing.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
So how you guys doing?
Doing well, man.
So good to be on this show. Thank you for having us, man.
Yeah, very excited.
I'm really pumped to be doing this with you.
So am I, baby.
Is this your first, like, kind of cross-promotion-y, kind of working with other podcasters? Like,
pretty much. Yeah.
We're
Are you
the
going to be gentle?
I'm not going to make any promises just yet.
You can bite the pillow. It's all right.
Wow. We just went there. Holy cow. Okay. So let's get a little bit of background on Josh and Tom. Josh, before you were a nerd, you were actually a geek, a theater geek, right?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, that's so funny. I went to college for acting. Like I was a really shy kid, and when I hit high school, some of my friends just egged me on to try out for the play, and I did. And the cliche is I got the theater bug. I got bit, it got me out of my shell. And I went on to, like, in high school, I was in all of the plays. And then in, like, senior year, I was accepted to Cal Arts for, like, a very selective, like, acting program that they had for the summer. And then I went on to, in college, I studied acting. And then I did the cliche thing. I gave up on acting for a little while, and I kind of lived my life, and my life fell apart at one point. And my friend who lived in LA was like, "Hey, man, come stay on my couch. Why don't you give that acting thing a try again?" And so I got on start the country music. I got on a Greyhound bus with a couple $100 in my pocket. I pulled into the Greyhound station in Hollywood. Doesn't exist anymore. And started my life in LA, and I gave it a shot. I will say that I gave it a shot. I got an agent. I got on Avail a lot. Never booked anything. So I was I started, she was my girlfriend at the time, but now my wife. Nice. I needed to have some sort of direction. And so, because theater just wasn't that. Unfortunately, and I just didn't have that thing that some people have to, like, push to become an actor, and I'm not okay with the starving artist mentality, so I just couldn't live that life. And I went to audio school.
Video Symphony
doesn't exist anymore.
No.
Got my expert certification in Pro Tools. Got really hooked on post-production, and one day, my wife's a writer, producer, and promo, has been for a really long time. And she took me to work with her one day. And I met one of now my mentor and a really good friend, Joel Smith. Shout out to him. He's an amazing mixer.
Shout out.
I watched him do what he was doing, and I was like, I want to do that. That is so cool. And
what was it about that? What was it about that just caught your attention?
You know, the way that I always talk about it with people is that promo for me is like, it's perfect. I love trailers. I love short form media, like short films. Like I've mixed a couple of Tom's things.
Hi.
I like short form because I have the attention span of a gnat sometimes. And so like
Squirrel!
Squirrel. So oftentimes I get, and plus with short form media like trailers or short films, there's a little less space. And so I almost feel with limitations, you have more creativity. Like you're pushed to have more creativity to, how do I make this 2 minutes, 30 seconds, 10 seconds interesting? And shout out to some of the amazing editors out there that just have that instinct for sound design. Because oftentimes when I'm mixing something, actually 9.9 times out of 10, I'm mixing something that has already been designed. And so I just like that. It's fun. I get a kick out of it. It's one of those things that thing that sometimes people strive for where you lose time doing that thing. Post-production, specifically promo, trailers, teasers, that kind of thing. That's my thing. I love, and I get such a kick when it's something that I'm a fan of. Like I mixed a BioWare trailer recently, and then the same week it went up in like a video game like online convention, and I was like, oh shit, that is so
my
dope.
stuff.
I mixed that. Oh my
That's
God.
awesome.
So it's it's exciting. Trailers trailers nowadays are much more exciting and very like in your face and whatnot. So yeah, that's
Before we get too far down the road with your story, Tom, you've been writing and shooting videos since you were a kid.
Oh man.
What kinds of projects were you doing? I think at one point you mentioned when you were 14, you picked up a video camera. Like what kind of stuff were you doing at that point?
How's it feel, Tom? You got the deep dive.
It's wonderful and scary at the same time. I first off want to ask, is cussing allowed? Because I want to make sure.
Fuck no.
Okay, cool.
Okay,
just for the kids. You know what I'm saying? For the kids.
It's for the kids.
For the kids. So yeah.
Just anything other than shit, fuck, piss, cocksucker, motherfucker. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. Copy that. So as a very young child, being raised as a first generation Asian American, my parents are immigrants. And so they weren't so much like stereotypical, like, be a doctor, be an engineer. They were just more like, what do you want to be? What do you want to be? And the mentality of, do you want this toy or do you want this thing? Do you really want it? Are you sure you want it? They would ask me like 12 times, like I'm signing a contract.
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, this is. I've remembered this since I've been 4 till 8 years old. Like this is just a normal thing in life. So like for me, it's always been like, are you sure whatever you're going to do, are you going to do it? And so I remember this was a tradition. Every birthday, they would always ask, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I was like, I just want to be left alone right now and watch some movies. And movies and film were my third parent. So as soon as I kind of figured out like they will like leave me alone if I like give them an answer. And I think haphazardly, I just said like, I want to make the movies. And I really started thinking about it because that mentality of like, do you really want to do this? Like, you're going to have to live up to this answer. And I really thought, I was like, yeah, I want to be the person, because I would be that kid who would memorize, like every line from The Mask. And I was probably too young to watch the movie, but I watched it. And by the time like I can start realizing like, oh, my parents are divorced, I can start asking for money and they won't know that the other one's giving me money. And
working it.
Exactly. So you got to find a system, independent filmmaking, you just find smart ingenuity ways to do things. And I think this was like during the advent of YouTube, right? So like not realizing restrictions were involved, right? Like I grew up not knowing that you couldn't carry a camera, like a film camera around, and like the advent of digital was huge. Michael Mann and Collateral. So as soon as I was able to exploit my parents for money, I bought myself a Sony camcorder, and I just said I want to start shooting some stuff. And listening to some trailer geeks and teaser gods, I really agree with a lot of the sentimentality of like, the music comes first, the musicality of how things come together. So I would just do these,
Do you
cringy.
do you see why I was like, Tom and I I've worked on his projects, and I'm like, I need the music.
Yeah,
Give me the music.
and so I would just do these cringy things that I'm like, I want to step away from, of like these music videos of me and my friends hanging out and doing things. And it got to the point where it's like, hey, I used to show my dad, and my dad, call it, stereotypical, but never really approved anything that I ever did. But he said like, nothing in this matters if you don't have like a story to tell. And I was like, all right, relax, baby. And so I started shooting things, and still something I'd still want to walk away from because they're like just not great, because I was a 14-year-old kid, and penis and fart jokes were rampant growing up. So that
not anymore though.
Tastefully.
No, they
tastefully.
just. Oh, okay.
Tastefully. They have a proper
fart
time.
jokes.
Yeah. Use it for tasteful subversion within the narrative. That's me. But now so that just continued on, and then I would recruit friends, and we would shoot a thing, and I just lived by that Cameron mentality of like, all you're doing now is just battling for a wage. So keep shooting, keep making stories, and this followed me up until high school, and I would submit short films to film festivals, and I got really obsessed with like YouTubers who would like show like a laurel. They would show like the little film laurel of like Sundance Film Festival, San Jose Film Festival, San Francisco.
Right.
And so I was just like, oh man, I just want one of those. And when I went to college and studied film and theory,
so all this is before you even got to Cal State Sacramento.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's awesome. Prolific at an early age.
I growing up in Sacramento, there was not a lot, people don't say like film grows there, right? There's a lot of great filmmakers that come from there, but that's not where film happens. And you move to where the business is. And at that time I was, I'm a child of the Pell and financial aid grants. So I just immediately, as soon as I could, upped my technology, got a DSLR, and studied as many editing software as I could. I started with Windows Movie Maker, Sony Vegas.
Hell yeah.
Anything that the internet had to offer, and then going into courses and actually learning how to edit, taking 4 years of editing classes, is Final Cut 7, and then when it's switched to 10, and then Premiere, and then also Avid. So once I was able to start taking those film courses, I was kind of like, whatever I'm gonna do to go forward and succeed, and try to make it as big as I can before making the move to LA. And I don't know if you looked into this far, but like it was even to the point where I had to like bring in like this film club because my college didn't have one. I was like, how do we
What
have
was
a
that film club called?
It was the Hornet Film Society. I don't know if it still exists anymore, but when I got there, apparently it had existed at like a version 1.
Okay.
And all those students would just like either pay money to go watch films in film festivals or watch films in a screening room, and that was it. And then so when I came in and I said, hey, I got like 2 years left to graduate. I got to do something with my time. I got to say something on my resume, because there's no like film internships in Sacramento. You could work at a TV studio, but it's not like the same of like in the creative process. Not even like PA work,
Yeah.
So I, went to the faculty advisor, and her and I worked together to try to resurrect the Hornet Film Society. And I had to do it from the ground up. And I just brought in like as many alumni as I could, or any people who were interested. And I said, we're going to make films and submit them festivals and try to get our name out there. I don't want this to be a place where you just study the thing that you want to make and not actually practice making it. And this is the time to make mistakes.
Yeah. So you just do it. You just got to do it.
Yeah. And it was, you have that young gumption of just, not caring about the repercussions. You're willing to shoot guerrilla and then have the police come, so you can't shoot here, and then delete your footage. You're like, oh, all right, well, we have a story. So, and then once, actually, one of my fraternity member brothers, Ricky Granados, shout out to him. He hit me up my senior year and said, hey, do you want to work on a commercial we're doing? I work in LA now. I'm a locations manager. And because of this relationship, when I moved down to Los Angeles, he helped me start my 4-year career of PAing to coordinating to management and then even producing a feature film.
So just getting on sets, and you had somebody that was telling you, here's the track, here's what you can do to advance your career in production.
Kinda. I mean, he was also kind of learning a little bit too and saying like, hey man, that's the key PA, that's the producer, just listen to them. And I'm like, yes, sir. And so,
right.
And, you make a good impression on somebody and they want to bring you on to the next job and the next job and the next job. And then, sooner or later, like the jobs might get smaller or bigger. And then they're like, hey, can you, office PA? Can you be the secretary? Can you be the production coordinator? Can you do some management work? So, cutting my teeth on that was really nice. And as I've heard on a couple of your guests on the show, production life, PA life is not the biz sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're
suck, man.
Yeah, sometimes you're on a scissor lift and just holding a hazer at somebody. And I immediately was like, okay, well, I need to start making my own things. And during this time as well, like, and that's the indie life, right? And also the LA life. If you don't have a side hustle, do you really live in LA? So yeah, I was trying to make films, and with our other host, Corey, we, shoot, a web series, and we have a channel, and that's been submitted to festivals, and that's won awards for Best Ensemble. I would write and direct and produce, finance, I do everything, that's what has to happen. Other films that I've done, and they've, been across the country and, gotten some awards from that. And, now it's up to the next one while, we can still have the time to work on something new, just a lot of writing, so.
Now, Josh, before we got on the air, you had mentioned that when you were at Video Symphony, you had developed a list of dream places to work.
Yeah.
And Buddha Jones was among those places. How did you know about those places? Because it's kind of a hidden. The trailer industry is kind of a hidden industry.
Yeah.
How did you even know enough to know that these companies existed, let alone enough about them to know you wanted to work there?
I mean, it really came. I was lucky. With Video Symphony, what I liked about them is in your last kind of quote semester, they had like job hunt classes, like how to job hunt, especially in the industry. And
I just figured out why Video Symphony is no longer in business.
Yeah,
because they didn't have me teaching that job hunt class.
Hell yeah,
fuckers.
But the instructor of this class put a heavy emphasis on this new-ish thing, and it was LinkedIn.
Oh, okay.
And
that makes sense.
He kept saying, LinkedIn, this is the next thing for job hunting and all that kind of stuff. And up until that point, it was a very baby website. I know that it had been out for a while, but it wasn't as prevalent as I think it is today. And so I kind of made a focus on my LinkedIn, and it also happened to know people that were already in that world. Like, and I could ask, like I've mentioned before, my mentor, Joel, I could ask, names of companies, and I knew somebody who was an editor at Trailer Park, and I knew that name. I knew that. And LinkedIn has this great function that if you're looking at one company, it'll show you companies that are like that. And so I remember, like, over the span of, I don't really know how long it was just like kind of a research of like going to that company, seeing the recommended. It's just like finding a movie on iTunes or something where you're like, well, I don't want to watch that, but let's see what's recommended. And so I would just go, oh, okay, Motion. Oh, okay. Trailer Park. Oh, okay. Buddha Jones. What's this? And I just went through all of the different ones and honestly went to their website. And sometimes it's as simple as looking at their body of work and looking at kind of their mission statement. And so Buddha Jones was on that list, Trailer Park. And oftentimes it was from the body of work. I have always been I don't know what it is. I am one of those guys that wants to get to the movie early to see the trailers. I love trailers.
Absolutely.
I
Pisses me
love
off
them.
when we miss trailers.
Yeah, and my wife's not because she's been in promo for so long, but I'm like, no. I want to see the trailers.
Yeah.
It's like research for me sometimes when I'm listening to a trailer, but yeah, so I just made that list, and if I'm honest, it wasn't a long list. But Buddha Jones was on the top, Trailer Park.
That's great.
The CW, the CW was kind of one of those things that it was kind of like almost in the family. Like it was like I wanted to work there because my mentor worked there, and also at the time I was a Supernatural fan and Flash and Arrow and those kinds of things. Like I liked CW products, and so to get to mix promos for these things that I like, sign me up. I'm cool.
Yeah.
I'm cool with that.
Now, Nerd On has 3 other co-hosts.
Yes.
Correct.
How did you all meet? It's Caitlin, Corey, you two.
Yeah.
And Ollie.
Okay, and Ollie. How did you all meet?
On LinkedIn. I'm kidding.
No, come on. You got me.
Actually, it started with the 4 guys, Ollie, Tom, me, and Corey. We all worked at Apple.
Okay.
And at one point, we all worked at the same store, and Tom and Corey had already known each other for quite a while. I was kind of I joined the store later. And honestly, it really came down to kind of the nature of our show. It would just be 4 friends talking about stuff like, hey, did you see that thing? Did you read that? Or blah, blah, blah. And it just happened that the 4 of us tended to gravitate towards each other and just end up shooting the shit about whatever.
Let me dramatize it a little bit, because we would chat, right? It would be in the back room, and it would be like on hours, and so it'd be like a little like, oh my god, do you want to talk? It would be like gossipy, and then people would start like coming around and start hearing us talk, and then like we would like, what do you think? And then they would say, I don't know. But then us 4 would just have this like frenetic, energy, and we would just be excited to talk about these things that we didn't realize that we had so much in common with. And so people, I think Corey had been like, maybe we should do a podcast. And people were like, oh, you guys should do a podcast. And at this time, I had been part of another podcast, and I was, shooting other things, and I just wanted to kill myself hearing the idea of being another podcast. I was like, it's too much. And then, to Josh's point, like we sat down, we had a meeting, and we really discussed what we wanted to do with the show and how it was going to be. Like the show notes is somewhat kind of based off just casual conversation when you leave a movie, right? Like, what'd you think? I don't know. What was your favorite character? What'd you not like? What'd you love? But we take it so seriously in terms of like the regularity of the show. And then just to add into where Caitlin came involved, like I mentioned earlier, Corey and I shoot a multitude of things, but one particularly that has regularity is a web series called PAs, and this was going to be our season 1 finale. And mind you, this show became like an audience fan favorite because they just want to do other bits. I'm not too much of like a big comedy guy, but I do like the cinematic, like, hey, let's tell it in a cool way. And this became like 1 bit, and then it evolved into 10 more bits into a full episode and character arcs. And Caitlin became involved. And then we had been already doing the podcast at this point, and we were really thinking like, hey, we can utilize somebody that has more experience within like going to conventions and websites and articles. And so she had so much to offer, and she was excited. And I think at the point in her life, she was very like she had just left one creative group and then now like looking for a new home, and we became the home.
That's awesome. So give us the log line or more of what the show has evolved into.
Oh man. The basic one that we use on everything, on all the promotional material, is where all levels of nerd are welcome. Because what we realized, if I'm honest,
well, you are good. Now I'm a fan. Like I'm subscribed. I get everything.
It's working.
So
it's working.
I'm converted. But it's like it really is shit that you're interested in, and it's from film to TV to cartoons to comics to games to, and nerd on about it.
Yeah, exactly.
How does that go? Nerd on?
You get your nerd on about it.
Get your nerd on. I have a raging nerd on.
Yeah.
Oh, shut up.
Yeah. There's different iterations.
Okay.
I mean, really what it came down to is when we first started, like Tom mentioned, we had a meeting of like, what is Nerd On about? Like, what are we here to do? And, you know, the phrase, let's nerd out about this. I mean, we had so many, dozens of names. And honestly, it came down to, does that sound like us? And honestly, is the domain
Right.
available?
It's all about the domain
Is
and the
the
IG
social
handle, right?
available? All that kind of stuff. And
SEO, yeah.
nerd out is a very common phrase. Nerd on is not.
Okay.
And it just kind of happened. And then we're all Batman fans. We're all like the Dark Knight fans. And so the Nolan series. And so our opening is, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Nerd On the podcast. You didn't need, but you deserve. And where all levels of nerd are welcome. And as we grew, we started to understand that there is something missing from nerd culture. And it is acceptance. It is an openness, and it is a welcoming of, because oftentimes nerd culture can be, unfortunately,
Toxic.
Yeah,
in all
very
honesty, it can be
toxic.
toxic.
You aspire to be the best Beavis and Butthead you can be. You know, like, or
Yeah.
is that because you guys were born? You were born in 85. You were born in 89.
I'm 91, baby.
So fuck you. First of all,
Don't worry, my back doesn't hurt yet.
I know. So Beavis and Butthead might be a little
I get
ancient
it.
history.
I get
Okay.
it.
But you know the reference. It's
Yeah,
just like, that sucks.
Yeah. I mean, and that's kind of the Tom kind of talks about this too, of like, it's one thing to shit on something, and then it's one thing to critically analyze. You can do that and still like something.
I used to say our anal eyes will analyze these things,
Yeah.
because we were being very critical about things, and this is coming a little
You
bit.
got to type that up, put it on a T-shirt, put it on a bumper sticker, sell that merch, baby.
Yeah, I know, right? But it kind of comes from a little bit of the background. So, like I said, I was in a podcast, and Josh has been in multiple podcasts before too, and so we've had experience of like, hey, these are the things that didn't work. And for me, being in a comic book podcast, which is part of our podcast family, I was like, I need to not be able to just, pigeonhole myself into one thing. I need to be able to express the gamut of things. And I have one of our shirts, which is cultured swine, because we have this joke of saying, like, to someone who hasn't watched, I don't know, let's say, Avatar: The Last Airbender, Ghostbusters, and if they haven't watched that, then it's like, oh, are you like an uncultured swine? What's going on? But it's like in the nice way, and I think that's the tough thing. Where it's like, at least for me, when I studied in film, it's like critics are one thing, but theorists are another, right? And so to write and try to analyze things with a somewhat academic lens is sometimes hard, right? You're having to engage in ways that you didn't think you're engaging. Like, you're using a lot of your previous experiences in order to be like, okay, well, I like this film because I grew up watching these kind of films, or I like these comic books only because I don't like superhero stuff, so I only like the detective noir pulpy stuff. And it was a way for us to say, like, hey, we can objectively kind of look at it, and it's hard with art, right? Where I think Josh is talking about with, like, fandom could sometimes be so toxic where people are just gonna say, you're wrong, you're dumb, I hate this, cancel this, blah blah blah. Where we try to say, hey, like, Rotten Tomatoes said one thing, everyone's saying another thing, but let's see what it tried to do. Let's talk about what it does for other people, because I think there's plenty of things that you love, Corey, that maybe no one else likes, right? And I think it's a little unfair if it just becomes this, like, status quo, this dogma that, like, it's just generally accepted that this is, quote unquote, a bad thing. Where we try.
My career as a theater producer proved that point. There's clearly a lot of things I love that nobody else likes.
Yeah. And so there's things that we could say, like, I don't like that, but, you know, we try not to go into people's houses and steal their DVDs and break them in front of their face, right? You know, it's like, hey, like, we like this thing or we don't like this thing, but, you know, what you like is up to you. And we just try to have somewhat of a discussion around it that allows us to, you know, quote unquote, break it down and, you know, tell people that, like, hey, even with 5 different people that have different lifestyles, we can come together and still enjoy each other, even if we don't enjoy the same things.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's much needed right now, you know?
Yeah.
Getting different people from different points of view, different experiences, different backgrounds, you know, finding a common interest, even if you don't have the same taste about it, you know, even if you didn't come away liking it as much, or one liked it, one hated it, but still being able to have not just a civil conversation, but a fun conversation, and come away having enriched your relationship with those people of all kinds of, you know, differences, you know?
Yeah.
That's medicine, man. That's just good medicine for the world we're in right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's been plenty of times where Josh will just throw himself into the fire and say, like, I think I'm the uncultured one, and just say, like, just coming out. And I think it kind of creates more fun, because I think there is that sense of, like, I don't want to say the dumb thing, you know, like, don't ask the dumb question, but we're trying to create this space where it's like, it's okay to not have watched these things. We're at different age groups, you know. And recently during, you know, shutdown time, we did like a whole Monty Python's thing, and I never respected it for the genius that it was.
Oh man.
And so I was like, all right, I get it. I was the uncultured one this time. You guys win. And there is a level of, like, it's okay to not know everything. It's okay to try to explain and learn from your peers. And, you know, I think that's the tough thing with the internet right now, and with fandom specifically. Like, you're only remembered for the last worst thing you've said, right?
Yeah.
So we try to encourage positivity in that sense.
Before we move on to Nerd On, let's make sure to tell everybody how they can find Nerd On and plug into the community and subscribe, and Facebook and Twitter and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the easiest thing to do is to go to nerdon.tv.
Nerdon.tv.
It has all of the links to everything that we do. We have on social media, it is Nerd On TV on everything. So if you search that, it's going to come up. On YouTube, we have 2 channels. One is for gaming content, and one is for basically the podcast-oriented stuff. And then we also Twitch. We do, we're pretty much, especially in quarantine, almost streaming every single day. And then when it comes to the podcast, I mean, we're everywhere. We're Apple Podcast, iHeart, Spotify, you name it, we're on it.
As soon as you reached out, I'm on Podbean and Castbox and Apple and Spotify, and Nerd On, it came right up. So it really easy to find, but just really enjoyable content, and each of the different things that you do throughout any given week. I've listened to a few of them, but at least one of each type of thing that y'all are doing. And it's fun. If you like culture, if you like entertainment, if you enjoy feeling like you're hanging out with some cool, interesting people, you know, it's just a fun listen. So I really appreciate you guys coming on and sharing it with the Trailer Geeks audience. And
thanks for having us. It's really
appreciate you.
It's an honor. It really is. This is really cool.
Yeah. So this will end the Trailer Geeks portion. Well, I don't know. We'll kind of leak out into Nerd On. So thanks again for coming in, guys.
Of course.
Thank you.
Of course.
And now we're going on to Nerd On.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Nerd On, the podcast you didn't need but you deserve, and where all levels of nerd are welcome. We have a very special episode today. Aren't all of our episodes special?
They're all special.
All of them are special. We're going to do a little bit of the housekeeping up front because we do have a special guest, and we're going to start off with a little bit of introduction. I'm Josh.
My name is Tom.
And we are joined by Corey, and I'm going to give the whole spiel for Corey because I'm very excited to have him. But let's get into the housekeeping. A big shout out to the Nerd On Nation that is powered by Patreon. As a member of the Nerd On Nation, you do get fun perks, like you get bonus episodes that nobody else hears. You get early access to these episodes. You get early access to merch. You get
Nerd on Nudge.
You get the Nerd on Nudge for our Nerd on Update, in which we answer questions from you, the people, and you get that Nerd on Nudge to the front of the line to get your questions answered first. And you do get secret channels on our Discord. So yeah, check that out. It's a fun place to be. It's a fun community to be a part of. So nerdon.tv/Patreon and check out that Discord. It literally is growing by the day. It's really fun to see. We're almost in triple digits, which is it's crazy time. So check that out, nerdon.tv/Discord. And another shout out to our partners, Apogee, who have equipped us with these microphones, the Hype Mic, the ultimate podcasting microphone, and Odyssey headphones. As we say, and as Odyssey has accepted, if your ears were mouths, they taste like butter. They're just so good. They feel so good. They sound so good. I recommend them.
They are so good.
They are so good. But yeah, that is the housekeeping. Let us get on with the show. And I want to give the spiel.
The spiel, do it.
The spiel.
Do it to me.
I love trailers. Trailers are those things that get us pumped to see something we've only heard rumors about. They give us a glimpse of something special. They excite us. They hook us. And I love them. And who knew that there would be a podcast that is devoted to the art of trailers and teasers. So I am pleased to welcome Corey Nathan, the host of Trailer Geeks and Teaser Gods, a podcast in which you hear directly from the greatest creatives throughout the history of the modern trailer business. It is about honoring the work and the people behind the work of your favorite trailers, teasers, and posters. And later on in the show, we're going to give Corey the chance to get his nerd on about something that is near and dear to his heart, acting and his favorite actors. But everybody, give a warm welcome to Corey Nathan. Corey, welcome to Nerd On.
Yeah.
Dude, that was awesome. I might just rip that and use that as my intro for the show from now on.
Do it.
You're welcome.
That was-
Cut the check.
10
You're
cents
welcome.
residuals.
That was great.
So yeah, let's start from the beginning. Let's start the easy question. Kind of. Is it easy?
Yeah.
How are you doing in the
How are you?
quarantine? How's everything going these days?
That's not an easy question.
I know. It's loaded. I realize it's loaded.
Okay, so the candid answer is when this all happened, I was at a dinner meeting the day that the NBA announced they're suspending the season. So this was like sometime around March 12th, I want to say.
Yeah.
And he got it, the guy that I was with got it on his phone, and he basically like stood up and left the dinner meeting. He wasn't rude about it, but he was like, "Oh, this shit is real." And he left.
I got to quarantine now.
Yeah. So, and strangely, like it wasn't another couple days until California even went into lockdown, let alone the rest of the country. But when we did, I started thinking in terms of we have to think about what this is and what's on the other side of this, because the world is basically hitting a reset button. And sometimes that reset is just really freaking dramatic, whether it's personally or globally. And we got to think in those terms. What's it look like on the other side? And number one, how do I and we, my family, the people I love, the people I work with, how do we get through this? But then how do we place ourselves and readjust ourselves so that on the other side of this, we are still able to provide value to coworkers and collaborators, so that really was the project for me. One of my main sources of income has been through my headhunting practice. That's how I got to know all these people in the trailer world. That was my specialty as a headhunter. But thinking realistically, like if the economy is going to tank or even just hit a reset, I mean, people are going to be frugal. Companies are going to be frugal for we don't know how long. So I need to think about ways that I can provide value to those companies I've been working with for so long. Or if that's not possible, what are these other things that that I can be doing, we can be doing, that is at the intersection of culture and commerce and technology, just to be a relevant participant in interesting projects and hanging out with interesting people and somehow still be able to pay our mortgage. So that's what I've been thinking about, and that's what I've been working on for the last 6+ months.
Yeah. For what was going to be 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, I thought that it would be, I did think that it would be a couple weeks. We got a couple weeks in. I'm like, oh, okay. Realistically, this is going to be July 1st, and we get to the middle of June. Actually, no, we get to the end of May, and then George Floyd was killed. And then a whole other world earth shattering event happened. Some for great good, obviously. Not the killing of George Floyd, don't get me wrong, but like the protests and what it awakened in all of us, of people of goodwill that want to heal these centuries old wounds, But as far as the pandemic and the shutdowns, by a week into June, I'm thinking, oh, we're headed in the right direction, and a week later it was like, oh shit, those numbers are starting to spike again.
Yeah.
So it's been a crazy.
Yeah, it's a crazy time for everybody. So you mentioned headhunting. So we're gonna, before we get into about your podcast, what do you do? What is your thing? You said headhunting. What does that mean?
Explain that to the layman, please. For me, pretty much.
So my job is to help build companies or build new divisions one person at a time. So the kinds of folks that a company would come to me for, it's not what they can advertise for. You need to actively recruit these other people. So when I first got started, I didn't know it was a thing, but somebody that I consider a mentor, he was my very first client on my own, a guy named Craig Murray. He was the investor in Motion.
Shout out.
Okay.
Yeah. So Michael Mcintyre had this crazy idea to start a boutique competitor to Imaginary Forces, but more as a trailer company versus a pure design company. And I had no idea what the hell he was talking about, but it sounded really interesting. And his ultimate boss at that time was Craig Murray. He's working at CMP West, Craig Murray Productions West. And I didn't know how I'd help him, but I knew I wanted to help him because it sounded like a really cool idea. And once I started digging into what Imaginary Forces was, and Kyle Cooper was there at that time, and it was a couple of years after he did the opening title sequence for Seven. I'm like, this is really fucking cool. So I wanted to help in any way I could. I had a little bit of background in business as well as the arts. And I started writing a business plan for him. I started looking for real estate for him. I get to meet Craig Murray, and Murray is like, what are you doing? You writing a business plan? Oh, that's cute. He's like, you're not so writing sweet. A business plan. Yeah. Because he said, that's not, but you're not going to tell me anything that I don't already know. I know it's a good idea, but and I also know how to execute it. But I need you to help me execute it. I'm like, I thought I was. He's like, no, you're just writing a business plan, whatever. He goes, he distilled it down for me. And it was, at the end of the day, we know Michael has a good idea. And we know that if he executes the idea, it's going to be a really killer company. But in order to execute that idea, it comes down to people. And Craig said, I can't, there are certain people that are key to it. Certain kinds of creatives with certain level of credibility in the industry. I can't call my competitors and even explore whether that person is leaving their options or not.
Yeah.
Options open or not. And it was a short list of like, it's like if you get to a major league sport, a company really needs to upgrade its starting shortstop. A shortstop that has better range than its current shortstop and maybe can hit with a little bit of pop and has a decent on-base percentage. It's a very specific thing. Trailer world, entertainment advertising world is a major league sport in a lot of senses of the word.
Yeah.
So any company that is actively engaged in trying to be successful, there are specific things that they need. Whether it was Ant Farm at the top of their game and they realized they needed to diversify, we helped them get into games for the first time. Trailer Park that you know so well, they also came to a similar conclusion, but we helped them get into print for the first time. So gosh, now I'm second guessing myself whether I should even reveal some of the. But those stories are like 15 plus years old. But that's the kind of thing. So does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I think I think the other thing to bear in mind that it's just like I think that's so interesting because I work in that industry is that it's just like with anything that you don't know the players that are involved. Like you don't realize that. No, you look at a trailer and like you go, it's a Paramount movie. So, oh, well, Paramount did that trailer. No, they might not have. I mean, some studios do in-house, but very rarely. Oftentimes it's these places like Trailer Park, Buddha Jones, Motion, Ant Farm, that's their specialty. And it is a specialty. Like Bonnie, my wife, who is a writer producer who writes promos, we always talk about this, where it's like you have to, you're watching something, and I'm ruined forever of watching stuff because you go, that's a promo line. Oh, that's cut to that. Use that as the, it's like you can't. There are people that make those decisions, and it's a special kind of mind that makes a trailer. I think. I mean, it's like
I see. You're watching the show and you're doing selects without even realizing that you're doing it.
Selects, yeah. You're just like, oh, okay, yeah. They use that line. That's a good line. That sells the show. It's like, and that's kind of, I mean, to pull the veil back, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, trailers are advertisement.
Yeah. Well, you brought up an interesting point because the first 5-10 to 10 years of my career, it was the early 2000s. So there was value without me ever even doing a placement because my job was to take somebody new out to lunch every day. Mm-hmm. And over the course of the first maybe year to 2 years that I was in the business, what I was doing was I was developing the roster list of every shop in the industry and every editor at each shop and every producer, every writer, every designer, every music supervisor. So that was not information. Back then, before LinkedIn, before Facebook, there was the LA 411, and the LA 411 might have had a company or two that maybe had some foot in the industry, but it wasn't like it was listing Cimarron, Kaleidoscope, Aspect Ratio. Like these guys, they didn't need to list in the LA 411 because the only people that they needed to know about Aspect Ratio at that time was the 6 major studios. That's it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it was hard to find this information in the first place. That's why a lot of the stories you hear on that podcast of how people got into the industry starts with, I didn't know it was an industry.
Yeah.
So people kind of back into it. Now it's a little bit different, but yeah. So
yeah.
How does headhunting come into Trailer Geeks and Teaser Gods? How does this come to be? What was the inception of it?
The thing that kept me going for 20 years was not necessarily doing deals. I honestly don't tell anybody, but I didn't like that part. I really did. I liked the idea of helping a company. I liked the idea of helping a person advance their career if it was the right move for them. But I didn't like the deal. What I really, really valued was the relationships.
Process.
To a certain degree, the process. Mm-hmm. But for me, the process was about nurturing those relationships.
Exactly.
And the more I got to know individuals, and their stories and their passions and their concerns and their life stories, the more interesting I found it. And their life stories are all a thread in the bigger story of the trailer industry. And nobody really thoroughly told that story, So I think literally the first time I figured out how to download a podcast app and listen to my first podcast, I was like, this is the story. We can tell this story on a podcast. We can tell the story of the modern trailer industry or entertainment marketing more broadly in the podcast medium. It is just made for it. And the way to tell that story is by artfully and in an edifying way, one thread at a time. And the threads are those human beings, those interesting humans that make up the industry, that are the legends, the Hall of Famers, if you will, of the industry. So, yeah, and it's proven to be the case. Like, people that I was really terrified of interviewing, because I didn't know them that well, but I knew them enough to know that they were pretty introverted.
Mm-hmm.
They, two in particular, ended up being two of the most fascinating people, and not great interviews per se. They ended up being good interviews because they're such interesting people.
They have a story
and they
to tell.
did such great work, you know, work that's going to be, I believe that several of these people have done work that contributed to the culture that's still going to be talked about 100 years from now. Work that Dawn Bailey did, and some of the posters that she made, like her Wes Anderson stuff that she's done, is still going to be talked about and studied in art schools 100 years from now.
Yeah.
Some of the trailers that Skip Chasson has done, Gone in 60 Seconds, like, if you study editing,
Oh yeah.
you know, you're going to be studying and deconstructing how he reverse engineering how he came up with that.
Yeah.
You know, so
I mean,
those are two people I was really terrified of interviewing because I thought they were going to be shy, and I also, the vain side of me thought, they don't like me, they're not whatever, all that stuff.
Well,
so.
I mean, two things I'd love to speak about, like what you're saying, like the importance of people, like especially in the trailer industry, another part that people don't know about it is that it's not all the time, but oftentimes it can be a under the fire kind of thing where it's like, this needs to be done now. Like this, the client wants this.
Crunch
and
time,
so
baby.
like when you're building those relationships, you're building a team and you want to be able to trust the person next to you. You know what I mean? Like, work with the person, because you're also creating something that's going out to the world. And so you want to be able to trust that person under fire.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
The Foxhole
So,
family.
Yeah, the Foxhole family. But also, like, I've been thinking about this a lot because I've been listening to your show of like, it's really fascinating to watch a trailer now and watch a trailer from 1992.
Yes.
And to compare
even in
and contrast.
individuals' work. If you look at like Bill Neal's stuff, the first stuff that he was finishing in like the early 90s when he was at New Wave, it was good. It was, you could see that there's some, but it was very, very different than the stuff that he's been doing for the last 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Trailers have morphed and changed. Voiceover used to be a thing. Now it's not. Hardly ever.
Except in social. I've noticed in social, VO is being used a ton.
Yeah.
Which is great, which is great for the VO guys. So like, I'm happy for them. I root for those guys too. So there's got to be a place for the narrator.
Yeah. But I mean, because you're not going to get the movie guy voice hardly ever unless it's for a joke. Yeah.
I was listening to the first episode of Trailer Geeks, and I was like, man, I really hope he gets the opening where we can get introduced by the trailer movie guy. But I want to ask a question. This is a little bit more of like a topic. Like, I don't know if this is controversial or not, but particularly with awards, particularly with accolades and recognition, I think the industry has kind of shifted in the sense of like, we need to be more aware and start recognizing the talents that we haven't been for an industry's lifetime. Particularly with stunts. And I think there's even been, talk and rumor about having conversations of awarding best trailers. What are your thoughts on something like that?
On adjusting the criteria to illuminate and highlight those in our industry that are of diverse backgrounds. Is that what you're referring to?
Well, I mean, more of like I don't think there's currently a category for Academy Award for best trailer for a film or for a
in the actual Academy
in Academy Awards, yeah. And I think there's been somewhat of like a social media conversation bubbling of like, they should do this because it is an art form. And I think what you've kind of talked about so far is that you can follow a particular editors or a movie trailer's creation and see how they've grown. And I think that's something that should be recognized more.
Oh, I'd love it, man. I'd absolutely love it. There are two intra-industry awards shows, the Golden Trailer Awards and our presenting partners, the Clios, They, so there are times to recognize the work of the prior year, but that's just for our industry. But I mean, I would love it. I would absolutely, positively love it if there was, at least within the entertainment industry more broadly, a recognition of the work. I don't know. I'd like to think that there would be support for it, because even compared to when I first got into the industry, filmmakers themselves are a heck of a lot more involved in the process of creative advertising than they were. Now, there were individuals 20 years ago that were getting involved and sitting in a bay. You heard stories about, Mike Myers and Sandler, showing up to a bay. But that was definitely the exception to the rule. But now there's quite a few that at the very least are going to be on a fiber with an editor or a producer who are making their trailer. So I think that's a good thing. And if there's a way to, and even just in the credits, like just recently, I forget how many years it's been, but like I was sitting through the Marvel credits and I saw John Ibsen, who at Disney, and Frank Kioki, his boss at Disney, in creative advertising there. I saw them in the credits. I'm like, well, yeah, it's about time. They helped to bring this $200 million IP to the public. Like, they should be recognized at the very least in one of the 12,000 names.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you have a line for my boys?
Yeah.
No, I mean, and that's the thing with, particularly at least with Marvel or anything that's Disney, like, when it's coming out. Like the whole world knows. And I think, again, to your point, like it's because of individuals who, take this IP and, make sure that people are going to be sitting in seats for it. So
it needs
to be recognized.
I would love it, man.
Yeah. It's not just about giving I don't want to say a summary, but it's not just about that. It's and you don't want to give away there's a subtle dance that has to happen with a trailer of not crossing a line of too much, but also getting you pumped for that thing. So something like a Marvel trailer, or even something like Dunkirk, or something like that has great or even if you look at old like horror trailers or stuff like that, where you're just like there's a dance that has to be done. And so it's fascinating to me. Everybody at home, I really do suggest that if you're at all interested, like, even if you're not, check it out. Check out Trailer Geeks and Teaser Gods. Like, there's some fascinating stories. And what I find fascinating about it too is like a lot of them are filmmakers.
Yeah.
That started there. And I think that's fascinating because it's a film art, it is something that you having those skills is beneficial. Of like not only how to write a movie, but how do you sell a movie? You know what I mean? Like coming up with an elevator pitch. That's one of the hardest parts of a script, is like one of them. I know that there's a lot, but it's like, now how do I tell somebody about this in 2 minutes or less?
Right.
Like,
so there's definitely a lot of function there, but if you don't have good form, you're lost.
Yeah.
A lot of folks have talked about you have to make the audience feel something.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of competing responsibilities for the trailer maker.
Yeah.
It's huge. It sets the precedent of what audiences can expect or subvert. And I think that's it's the movie before the movie. And I did want to trade some notes actually from host to host. And I asked this question in our digital green room before we started recording was, you typically have a lot of guests on your show. And I think that's something that our Nerd On audience would just love, just to have different voices coming in and you being a consistent one to have conversations with. We are also no stranger to having guests on our show and talking to them. How much, and you kind of talked about it a little bit, but what is like the most research you've had to do before a guest came on?
Oh gosh, well, there was a recent one. The episode hasn't been released yet. There's a man named Joel Wayne who ran creative advertising for Warner Brothers for about 24, 25 years.
Wow.
And Joel is great. He's in his 80s now. He's fantastic. So I said, Joel, I know some of the campaigns that you worked on between 1980 and 2004. And he's an absolute legend in the industry. But I said, I don't know if you have a chance, do this. If not, I'll just talk to mutual friends and find out what they worked on with you. And I'll develop a list of the campaigns that you've worked on. A day later, Joel submits this list of 302 campaigns between 1980 and 2004. I'm like, oh shit, I got a lot of work to do.
Wow.
But that's somebody that, like, you know, if you had, I used the baseball reference before, but I'll use it another one. If you had the chance to interview Derek Jeter or in my case, Tom Seaver, may he rest in peace. I'm going to do a shitload of research. That guy is literally a Hall of Famer, you know, and until actually, coincidentally, until Derek Jeter got into the Hall of Fame, he had the highest percentage of votes to get into the Hall of Fame. Tom Seaver. Imagine interviewing that guy. You're not going to go to that party without putting your A game on. So we had Joel on, and I wasn't even. That was one of the first ones where I was the main interviewer. I was more of the Robin. What's her name? Howard Stern's Robin Givens.
Yeah,
is that her name? Yeah. So I was more of the Robin Givens or the Ed McMahon to Johnny Carson in that one. But even still, I wanted to know my stuff for that one. So that was 302 campaigns.
Wow, that's a lot.
That is a lot.
I always relate it to kind of like going on a date and just trying to have as much in your tool belt as possible. It's like, oh, we could talk about this, we could talk about that, we could talk about this, and I think there is a kindred spirit between host and host of like having like our guests come into the show and having a good time. Not feeling
that's what with Nerd On, our very first guest we did it interview style, like just like question answer, that kind of thing. And we realized it was boring. And so what we did was we were like, we kind of went to the drawing board and we were like, what if we had our guests come on and talk about something that they're nerdy about? And so we've had Kevin Conroy, who has been the voice of Batman for 30 years. We've had Jonathan Frakes from Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Oh, wow.
Billy West. And yes, of course we interview them because we're nerds. We want to talk to these people and ask questions about what they do. But we also get to spend some of our show talking about something that they're nerdy about. And I'm going to use this as a segue.
You buried a lead, though. Didn't you interview Mark Hamill at one point?
No.
Wait, what was that for?
But I have emailed with him. I will have that flex. I did work with Mark Hamill when I was an assistant engineer at a studio. He was in the VO booth and I got to be there in the session and whatnot. And then I broke my rule of like, can I take a picture? So that's on my website. But yeah, but yeah, he's a dream guest. So Mark, if you're listening or watching,
we know you are.
You're welcome here. We would love to have you. But I'm going to use this as a segue into the next part of our show, in which, we interview our guest about something that they're nerdy about. And Corey, I asked him the question of like, favorite movie? Are you a comic book reader? Or this, and he listed a number of things, but he was like, one thing that I don't talk about, don't get to talk about, is acting. Because you went to college for acting? Is that yes?
I went to a small theater conservatory in New York, and then I continued studying when I got out here. It was the last year that Stella Adler was alive, but then I continued for another 4 years after that with the lady who took the torch from her, Joanne Linville. So my generation of those guys, that motley crew, crazy bunch of creative, beautiful people was Ruffalo, Sarah Gellar, Benicio del Toro was just before us. There was a good crop, and believe it or not, the best actors among us, they were great. They were all great. But some of the best actors among us, we've never we heard of, but like the world hasn't heard of.
Yeah,
Not yet.
So
there's a lot of talent out there, and so kind of the overarching topic here is kind of it's just like a general conversation about the art of acting, but also we'll get into a little bit of like talking about our favorites of who excels in our world. Tom, you got a cheeky smile.
I have to ask. Okay, because all right, hold on. Because this isn't our first time we've had other shows and collaborate together. And
it's
this
not
also
your first Rodeo Drive.
no, it's not.
Yeah.
And this is also not the first time that the guest show collaborator breaks the wheel of like, what are we talking about? So I want to just go over the rules really quick.
Okay.
Because I'm like, hey, look, I like conventions and then breaking them if you know how to break them.
Okay.
That's just a filmmaker, right? Dead or alive actors.
Oh shit.
Oh, I only
okay.
did alive. Oh
So-
no, wait.
so that's what I'm
one
saying, you know what
one
I'm
is
saying?
dead.
I'm like-
One is dead. Okay, one is
I
dead.
had one on my list is dead.
Okay, and then okay, cool. So there's that, and then that's all I really wanted to ask because it doesn't change anything for me. So okay.
Okay. All right.
So wait, also
what
are we
is
gonna go round robin or what?
Well,
what
I want to open the conversation first of like, what is it about acting? Like to me, I went to college for it, so I studied it for hours and devoted my time and money
your life
to my life too, and it's still something that I view as something important in my life, even if I haven't been on a stage in a while or in front of a camera. Well, actually, I am in front of a camera. Shout out to YouTube.
all the time.
What is it about acting? I mean, it's an art form. It's what's
Yeah.
the importance of it? Like what do you think? Like,
To you,
so-
Corey.
The in Stanislavski's books, Stanislavski, a lot of people would say was the founder of method acting, right?
Yep.
This guy from the Lascaux Art Theater, who influenced great teachers here like Stella Adler, Sandy Meisner, Lee Strasberg. So Stanislavski would talk about Duza's Blush. He went to a performance of, I think it was Romeo and Juliet. And he saw two different performances. One was Sarah Bernhardt. I always confuse her name with the contemporary comedian. Anyway, one was this great actress, very performative. The other was Eleonora Duse. And Eleonora Duse's performance was so different. It wasn't presentational. It was experienced to the point where she had these involuntary reactions, such as at one point blushing, something you just can't fake. And Stanislavski, I'm oversimplifying the stories, devoted his work for the rest of his life to figuring out a method to give actors of how to recreate this night after night after night. I had an experience like that, and the first person on my list is someone who is known in New York theater circles, but she's not widely known outside of that. She was about 2 years behind me in a high school performing arts program. We went to the same high school together, and her name's Okwi Okpakwasili, and she Okwichuko Odanya Okpakwasili. Anyway, I memorized that. I made it my life's work to figure out how to say it. Anyway, no, Okwi played Titania in A Midsummer Night's Dream, and there was an Eleonora Duse's blush moment, that famous speech where she starts and she disrupts Oberon, and she says, "Set your heart at rest." I'm getting chills just thinking about it. Okwi, like I saw that living truthfully, imaginatively, and powerfully in the imaginary circumstances of Shakespeare, of the writer. And I said, man, this is a worthy pursuit. So I don't know if that answers your question.
I
but
think so.
That was an Eleanor Dooser's blush moment for me.
You got 2 for 1 right there.
Yeah.
Answer it and your first one.
Okay. All right.
I mean,
and yeah, do we want to go round robin with it, or talk a little bit about each why they're on our list?
Well, I mean, I'm interested to like. I think it's interesting to get kind of perspectives because Corey and I have acting experience, and Tom, you're the directing experience. So,
can I add to that a little bit though?
Yeah.
I've been asked by so many of my actor friends to act in things, and I say no, because I find from a director standpoint, the stage is a sacred place. And I think as much as it's a place to have fun and make up things, I think there is a little bit of respect that needs to happen, especially when I'm, in the video chat, I'm in between 2 actors, 2 people who have studied it and have lived it and have been so willing to live these characters out. And so I find it a heavy responsibility. And so when someone's like, you should just be in it, it's like, no, like I pick my actors very, very like carefully. And I go through auditions, and sometimes it's like, I wrote this for you because I've seen what you've done, and just kind of just insert myself to have some kind of like, I feel like egotistical like line irks me a lot. If there is something that's meant to be and it's like cheeky, then sure. If it's in the story and it helps the story, then sure. But I just find that from a writer director standpoint, I wrote this character, and then I am now asking an actor to become this person, and it's scary. I think it's honestly scary, and they are gonna now share the responsibility that I have of telling the story, being part of this framework, and it's like, now this is yours too, and now everything that you have lived through and you have experienced will become part of this. You are now adding to the tapestry, which is this character that is from my brain and heart onto the screen, and that's why it's just like, you should be in it. It's like, I can't. I'll have someone who looks like me, who's an actor, to be in there as a cameo. But yeah,
did you ever write a character and imagine that character one way, and then an actor showed up and did a reading that looked completely different than what you originally imagined, and you just had to cast that completely different looking? So that's happened for you?
Yeah, it's been some of my favorite decisions of being like, you know what? I did not see that coming. And I was with people like the producers on the project, and they're like, I don't really know. It's like, it's not really what you wrote. I was like, yeah, but look what they're bringing into it.
Right.
Look at this like dimension that I didn't even think that we were going to add into it. And now it creates a nuance that I now need to have. And we can work upon that. And I was there for it. And I think there is that, relationship that, creator and collaborator must have in order to be like, hey, this is, as much as you want to be an auteur, but it's like, let's make the magic together and become, better than what we both expected it to be. So
I don't know if it's an apocryphal story, but I'd heard that The Graduate was originally written for someone who looks more like Robert Redford, but Dustin Hoffman came in and gave this brilliant reading, and they ended up casting him.
That doesn't surprise me, just because the casting is a little weird that everyone's just like 10 years older than Dustin Hoffman.
Right. Yeah.
But
I mean,
go ahead, Josh.
I was just gonna say, I mean, acting for me, it was such it's an experience. Like the acting teachers that I remember so like fondly and just like come straight to my head are the ones that really like affected me in terms of the way that I did. And this sounds so weird, and I feel weird saying it, but it's a craft. Like the of that helped my craft when I was practicing it, of what to think about and how to prepare. And like Stanislavski was a part of that, kind of like the sense memory, that kind of stuff. And, there is a technical side of acting, of course. There's memorizing lines, there's blocking, but then there's that next step that is like, not to like at all, like pat myself on the shoulder or pat anybody. It's like, it's the part where you're brave enough to cross the line of like living that character, but there's also like I had one acting teacher say this to me that blew my mind was trying to think of characters like yourself. Like that I always found to be like interesting of like don't always try to pretend like that you're somebody else, but be yourself in that character. I don't know. There's a lot.
So that was an epiphany at a certain point, is that you can do you better than anybody else can do you, and you can do you better than you can do anybody else. So that's what you have to offer. So it's not to say that that you're not supposed to create build a character, if you will, or create a role, as Stanislavski said, build a character, create a role. But you have more of yourself to give than anything else that you have to offer. So it's another way of saying what you just said.
Yeah.
And I think what that sentiment kind of goes back to not goes back, but it goes back to something I always think about in terms of like directing style. And I always say like I have a lot of friends who they always say that they try to bow out of any type of film conversation that I have because there's like, I just didn't study it and I'm not going to keep up. And I was like, when I say style, just think if Wes Anderson was told to direct Jurassic Park, different movie.
And it's very different movie.
Like that's all you need to know.
Totally different movie.
And it's like the directors that have the style, whether you like it or not, are like very skilled in their craft. And I would say the same thing with actors, right? Like you can.
I'm now imagining velociraptors with dry senses of humor,
and just all nicely framed up and everything like that. Just gets
beautifully framed.
But that goes in line with actors, right? Like I think of one all the time of like any Tarantino film, and you have someone else play Samuel Jackson's character. You're like, it would be a totally different movie.
Yeah.
And I think there is again, a little balance and melody. I was talking to a friend who has done some acting, and his approach was he wants to be that mold. He wants to be like, you give me the character and I'll become that character. Where I find a little bit of the balance of like, this is the framework. You could work within the framework. Like find your place within it. If I say, go up, go down, I'll push you around and all that stuff. But it's a collaborative piece at this point.
I mean, but there's also kind of like there's another part of acting, like scene study. Like, I mean, the words come to you on the script, obviously, but like you'll read a script, and sometimes as an actor, you're finding the hidden messages. Like you're finding the hidden thing. Like sometimes you're building that character within yourself of like, who is this person? It's not just what's on the page, because you have to bring somebody to life. Like you're not just saying the word, like the words, there's like subtext. So that's why it's beautiful to Corey, to your point of like, each person is going to read the same exact script and get different interpretations of like, oh, well, I got this from it. And so it's just so interesting that you never know what those roles were. And then you have the people that made them what they are, made the role something. It's like, I don't know. It's interesting to watch like different productions of the same thing, like watching different Hamlets, watching different proofs, watching different, all these kinds of different things of like, it's, and to separate it and not go, oh, well, that was a bad performance. No, that was just a different performance of this. So it's so, just, yeah.
To Tom's point, there are certain moments in film where that collaboration between director, actor, and the rest of the orchestra, the rest of the set, it really clicks. And sometimes it's when accidents happen. So one of the greatest, actually two, now that I think of it, two of the greatest, most iconic film scenes of all time. One was on the water. It was on the waterfront, back of the cab scene, Brando and Steiger. That famous soliloquy was improvised in response to an accident that happened.
Oh yeah, no, I know this story. Yeah.
So did you read Kazan's autobiography? Because it's in there.
No.
I don't know if it's in Brando's.
I watched it on a video essay, and they were talking about, it was just talking about the relationship between director and actor, and it was talking about how they had the accident beforehand. So I was like, oh, okay. But
Where the film broke, there was supposed to be a film playing behind it to make it look like they were going through the old neighborhood. And it wasn't, Spiegel was the producer. I forgot the writer's name. He's from Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Anyway, he had this beautiful script written about the old neighborhood. The film breaks up, and Steiger and Brando were like, no, come on, you can't do the scene, you know? But Kazan, being a creative director, said, I'll come up with a solution, we'll do the scene. So he gets that Venetian blind that they used to have in the old cabs in New York and puts in, he's like, go do the scene. But at that point, Steiger and Brando were too far gone. They were like, no, we're going to do our scene. We're going to do, and Kazan trusted that he had actors that could pull that off. I had the greatest gift. I fucking hated my life. The year that I had to be a limo driver, I hated the world. I hated the universe. I hated myself. I hated everything about everything. But that whole year was worth it because I got Rod Steiger for a day.
Whoa.
Got Steiger in the back of my limo. And he was a crazy old coot by that time. But I had just finished Kazan's autobiography, so I knew a little bit about that story. I asked him about that. And he said, yeah, so we improvised it. And I don't know if this was in Kazan's telling of the story, but when Steiger's character pulls out the gun, he said that wasn't written anywhere. I wasn't supposed to do that. But he said, I knew that I had Marlon who'd be able to work off of it. But he goes, I made a plan, didn't write a script per se, but he had a plan for two possibilities, either fear or anger. And he could go with one of those two routes. But he goes, that motherfucker took it a whole other direction. He went hurt. He got hurt. I was his big brother. And I'm pulling a gun out. And that's where that soliloquy, oh, Charlie, you should have looked out for me just a little bit. Oh, Charlie. Like that whole thing, I could have been a somebody. I could have been a contender. Yeah. That whole thing was because Steiger wanted to give his acting partner a surprise, and they had a director that was wise enough to trust them as actors that they'd come up with something, pulls out the gun, and he just takes that, and pushes, oh, Charlie, that's where that came from.
That's
but
awesome.
Steiger said he didn't talk to Brando to that day because we all knew, everybody on the set knew it was magic. So, we did that a few times. We do a few close-ups, you get a few different shots. And then he goes, that motherfucker, he pulled a typical Brando. He goes, I'm tired. I can't do any more today. And he leaves. So Steiger had to do all his close-ups without his acting partner there.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's
but
awesome.
the other one was Taxi Driver. Was that Scorsese's third film or fourth film?
I thought it was third.
So, yeah. So are you talking to me?
Mm-hmm.
In the original script, it was just I forget how it was originally written, but it was basically what's Brando's De Niro's character's name?
Travis? No.
Yeah, Travis Bickle.
Yeah.
Travis, you're right. So it's just like Travis Bickle looks in the mirror, something really brief, but Scorsese says, no, just keep rolling. Let's see what he does, and they just keep rolling. And then De Niro just like starts going in, like he's in there, and he starts going into it. And he's imagining himself in that situation, and that's how it played out. But none of that was written. It was just a smart, wise director that was willing to take a ride with an actor who knew what the fuck he was doing, that's just bold, man. And it's some of our most iconic moments in film history.
Yeah.
So why don't we
Sorry.
No, I love
think
it.
It's
I'm going
I love
up.
it.
I got my nerd on.
Yeah, there it is.
Ding, ding.
Catchphrase. So, let's go round robin. 5. It's our top 5 actors or actresses. And I gotta admit, as Tom knows, narrowing things down for me
it's kryptonite.
it's like my life is over. I got to take somebody off of this. No, I don't want to take somebody off of this list.
But just be method that you have to.
Yeah. I'll start us off. One of my favorite actors of all time, R.I.P. His pure range and heart and humor, Robin Williams. To watch something, one of my favorite Robin Williams movies is Good Morning Vietnam. That's a movie, it's heartfelt, but to see somebody be able to, the range that Robin had of being able to see something like Aladdin or Mrs. Doubtfire, which Mrs. Doubtfire has its very heartful moments. Check out our episode recently with Bob Bergen. We talk about Mrs. Doubtfire.
Good Will Hunting has great.
Good Will Hunting.
Yeah.
Patch Adams. Dead Poets Society.
One of his early film works, I think were they still doing Mork and Mindy when he did The World According to Garp?
I think so.
That's not what you would have expected for one of his early films, right? But that was talk about heart.
Yeah.
You know?
So it's just, that Robin, he is one of the few people, one of the few celebrities, I will say, that has, when they died, affected me. Like, it really made me go, my heart sank. And anytime I see, like, there's a new documentary that's out about him and his last few years of his, basically they're talking about what his brain chemistry was like.
Right.
And I haven't been able to bring myself to watch it yet. But anytime I see something with his face on it, with his name on it, I'm just like, I just remember being a kid and even being when I was studying acting, of just like watching those kinds of things and being like, yeah, that's something. That's lightning. Next.
So Corey, you already went with your first one, so I'm gonna go with my first one. I don't know which order I should go. There's no particular order whatsoever.
No particular order for me.
And if you've listened to this show before, if you know who I am, you know I am a Batman shill. And it's not pretty. But I actually started really loving this actor outside of his portrayal of Batman, and I'm talking about Christian Bale.
Yeah.
I thought Val Kilmer. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Hey, you know
But
what?
he
That
is
was
good.
that was my first Batman. That was actually my first Batman. But Christian Bale, I actually started really, really enjoying him. And I think this is like not the particular, like the traditional, what people would have been like, oh, this movie. It was The Prestige, which was Christopher Nolan's fourth film.
Okay. Right.
And that happens to be my favorite film. But the thing that I think that gravitated me towards him in particular, I mean, obviously I was a kid when I watched the film, so I was like, oh, look, it's Batman and Wolverine with Black Widow and Alfred. And, so it's like, it was, my brain just went there. But with The Prestige, however, just talking about an actor who kind of goes there. One, after watching the film one or a few times, I then started like looking into his body of work with The Machinist, Reign of Fire. I forget the film where he is a POW. Yeah, where Steve Zahn, and they're just skinny guys at the end of the movie.
Yeah, it wasn't so much the loss of weight; it was the scene where he was eating maggots. I'm like, that dude is really getting into it.
To see something like
committed.
The Machinist,
The
Machinist, and then his next movie is Batman Begins.
Mm-hmm.
You're like. I mean, the devotion, like that,
And I think there's a thing where a lot of people like, he's the human transformer, and like at the time of this recording, the Dune trailer just came out, and everyone's like, "Did you guys see Christian Bale?" They were like, "Who are you talking about?" I was like, "He gained 7,000 pounds to be the Worm." So it's like those kind of things. And he transforms for the role, which is never, I think, really asked about, at least so far in the interviews that I've watched of the different directors. Like, they never say like, you have to do this. It's like we can figure out a way. But he just finds it like natural within his process. So he's definitely probably read a book or two. But in Prestige, however, there was this unsettling rage and unhappiness that his character, Alfred Borden, has, that really resonated with me. It became an identifying characteristic that I really loved, that there was somebody who was from the scraps, who had an idea, who had a passion, who had a focus, and was going to do whatever it took to get out of the slums and get out of, have a life and have a family. And I've just kind of seen that same level of like, there is always this interior monologue that he does so well within his character and his delivery of his lines, in all his roles that he's portrayed. So Christian Bale is, top, or the first one I'll say, not maybe the top, but Corey, what you got next?
When you get a chance, watch if you haven't, watch Velvet Goldmine. He's in it, but also Ewan McGregor's in it. Jonathan Rhys-Meyers,
Okay.
Eddie Izzard. It's so good.
Right.
Anyway, Corey, you're next.
Can I pick up on the Christian Bale thing for a second?
Please. I could bail out all day.
So I was friendly with his sister and his dad. His sister was doing theater with us. And she's freaking brilliant director, brilliant everything. And their dad, David, was very supportive of the work that we were doing. And this was a time in Christian's life when he was in between his kid career and his adult career.
Mm.
And they were very, very mindful about which direction he would go, because he did this Spielberg thing that was really Empire of the Sun was a really profound film, maybe even underappreciated. Newsies was very popular, so there was an opportunity for him to go the popcorn route, very much. Just stardom and riches, but they chose a different direction. That when we were hanging out, that was the time when he took, I forget which one came first, American Psycho or Midsummer Night's Dream, but
Midsummer Night's Dream.
It was a Midsummer Night, yeah. So he was probably just coming back from that, but they specifically chose that one because he could get around a director, get around other actors, in particular Kevin Kline, that he wanted to be, that he wanted to learn something from, instead of some Shaggy Dog 3 or so. I don't know what it would have been, but it would have been a total commercial choice that would have made him quite wealthy and maybe got on some more magazine covers. But those movies are the ones he chose. And I think that set a good standard for the choices that he would make as an adult. So yeah, that just always impressed me, that he had the opportunity, but he eschewed those opportunities to make choices to fulfill a greater desire, a deeper desire, to eschew the vanity and the fame and the fortune, potentially, or at least delay those things, because there was great literature to bring to life, or a great book to bring to the screen. In the case of American Psycho. So I always respected that about him.
Yeah, in a lot of his interviews, he steers away from ever talking about his personal life, because he's like, the less you know more about me, the more you'll know about the character. And
yeah, that's interesting.
I've always really respected that, because there is star theory, which I studied in school, which is you stop looking at the character, you start looking at the actor more. It's like, oh, that's not Dr. Stone, that's The Rock. Right. there is those things that happen, and it's just unfortunately sometimes how our primal brain, our lizard brain, has a viewing habit. We just start seeing the person and not the actor, and so Christian Bale embodies that chameleon in that sense.
Well, the top of my list, obviously I said Oakley, but the person that I'll just continue to study and try to reverse engineer and deconstruct his work is DDL. Daniel Day-Lewis.
Oh my God. He was on my list and I was like, God, I got to remove him.
Drink your milk.
Yeah. So DDL, speaking about transformation into the character, I heard him talk about his performance of Lincoln. He does very few interviews. But it was so, it really warmed my heart to hear how and why, to hear about his preparation for that role. We hear about a lot of great actors who lose all kinds of weight, blah, blah, blah. For him, it wasn't about the losing the weight, almost as if it was like his trophy and, whatever of, I'm a great actor now. For him, it was more about the collaboration. He felt that he needed to provide a good frame for the other artists that were working on the film, in particular the costume designers. to have a good frame for them to do their work, and I thought that was really, really revealing because he understood that film at its best is a collaborative art.
Yes.
So
Very much so.
he needs to do his job in order for the other artists to do their best work. But from an actor standpoint, there's, again, this is a total oversimplification, but there's often thought of as the exterior. The Laurence Olivier perfected this art of finding the nose and finding the shoes and finding the stature, and and his job was making sure that he looked like and sounded like the character. Then method, and again, this is not totally accurate, but it's thought of as internal out, where I'm not a big Strasberg fan, but relive the death of your grandfather 1,000 times so you can find that tear, and we can get that shot.
Yeah.
But Daniel Day-Lewis has like a 10th degree black belt, internal, external, and several art forms that I'm not even aware of.
Yeah. I'm not even equipped.
Seriously, I can't like even Brando, like, and I'll get to Brando, but like even Brando, I watch his performances and I speak that language. I know what he's doing. I see it. Like, not to make too much of myself as an actor or a student of acting, but like I see what he's doing. I see what De Niro, I see what Pacino, I see what those guys are doing. But DDL, I can't. Like his work in Gangs of New York.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
That moment when DiCaprio's character wakes up and sees him there, sees Bill the Butcher there, and that little soliloquy he rolls out with, like, I can't even begin to approach that. Like, so I just need to submit myself to that character and just enjoy the brilliance of it.
Yeah.
Sometimes feels like he should just be the title of the movie.
Yeah. I mean, Daniel played, like, he went on a run where it was like the P.T. Anderson movie that he did, the Scorsese, like the directors he worked with, the Lincoln, like, and that was after like a decade and a half of like My Left Foot and The Boxer, and like,
and he hasn't been on a lot of films. And that's the thing you're kind of talking about with Christian Bale. It's like very particular with the roles, not just going for like, what will make me a lot of money and get me all this acclaim. So
yeah. So, man, I'll take DDL.
Yeah. Josh says back.
Number one that has been probably on my list and was always somebody I aspired to, Tom Hanks. Another person that the range that I think that it's always fascinating to me when somebody can go from a comedy to a drama and that kind of thing. But the thing that I think is, in my personal opinion, of like a crowning achievement is Castaway. Because if you watch it, I mean, most of the movies on the island, and a lot of it is unspoken, or there isn't another character. And if it is, it's an inanimate object. And for me, to make you feel something with a scene between one person and an inanimate object, and to feel that, because I can't even begin to understand the idea of like cabin fever or going in. Well, actually now, there's a certain amount of insanity kind of with that movie that I just was always just like, I just always respected him with that one. And, things like Forrest Gump, Saving Private Ryan, Big, The Burbs. I mean, there are movies that are just like in my brain, like perfect movies in my head that I'm just like, I will watch that again and again and again. And oftentimes it's just watching Tom Hanks do the thing.
If there's a perfect scene in film, it's the scene where his character in Philadelphia is breaking down the opera. You know which one I'm talking about,
I just watched it like maybe a month ago.
I'm getting chills. That's another one. I'm getting chills just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
And if you haven't experienced it, it's worth watching. That obviously the movie is a great movie, but
Yeah.
if you're a student of acting, if you're a student of filmmaking, because the angles and the lighting that the director chose for that scene,
mise en scène, baby.
You also have, another amazing actor, Denzel Washington. In that.
Denzel.
Are you adding another one?
No, I had to remove Denzel.
Dude, he was on my list, but I had to remove him. I was only allowed 5.
I know. You made it so hard, Corey. Sorry.
Denzel.
I kind of put those things.
Can we pause for a second and just say, talk about a moment in film? Like when I saw, what was this? The Revolutionary? No.
Glory?
Glory. Thank you.
Oh.
Glory.
Is it the Whip?
Civil War film. With the whip. And he starts out he takes his shirt off, puts his hands up, and then the whip and the one tear.
But then he just stone looking into a Simba's face.
Oh God.
And yeah, I remember watching that in high school and being like, this is what movies can be.
I mean, I shouldn't even have done 5 because we're going to be here for hours.
Yeah, we are.
This is going to be the 4-hour special. We're doing our top 100.
I can go next if you're. So I'm gonna switch it up. I had this list and I'm like, I'll do it in this order, but you know what? I'm gonna switch it up, baby. And this one's not gonna be too long of an explanation, but this is kind of more of a recent actress that I've been following recently. Karen Fukuhara. She portrays the girl in The Boys. And she's also Katana in Suicide Squad, and she probably has other works that I'm not listing right now. But one, real quick, represent Asian homies. But two, just recently in this season of The Boys that I've been watching, she's a mute character, so she doesn't speak vocally with her voice and all this stuff, but she signs. And there's a moment that I just saw recently, and I think there's people who've watched more films and TV than I have, and that's just easy just by being like older than me. But I have watched a good handful, especially when I think of like who is coming up, who are the award winners, who are the people that aren't being talked about, and who are the people of different ethnic and sexual orientations, right? So watching Karen Fukuhara recently in The Boys season 2, there is a moment where she's having this conversation through sign and you're reading the captions with another character, and it broke me for a second, and she didn't have to say a word. And that was something that I was just like, I can't deny the amount of talent required in someone. And she's not, she might be young in terms of biological age, but it just feels like this is not an easy feat to do. This is years and years and years of dedication to the craft. And so watching that, she's definitely now like skyrocketed up. And also, again, this top 5 thing is really hard. It's hard for me to not pick anyone from the cast of The Watchmen show, because that's my favorite show like the last 2 years. So, but yeah, that's my number 2, Karen Fukuhara. Corey?
All right. Well, I mentioned Brando. I think if it's possible to underappreciate Brando, he's underappreciated.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's too easy to dismiss him for diction that he chose to use on a couple of his more popular, widely seen films. But if you look at that same time period, like he chose a certain diction for. It wasn't his first film; it was the second film, Streetcar. But even if you watched his first film, The Men, and then the film that came right after that, I think it was another Kazan film, Viva Zapata. Was that the Kazan film? I might be wrong about that.
I'm not.
But like he made choices with his diction, And then in that same time period, I think within a couple of years, he did Caesar. He played Mark Antony in Caesar within a couple of years after Streetcar. So the notion that you see one iconic scene from The Wild One, and then the other iconic scene is Stella, from Streetcar. And oh yeah, he just didn't use it. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, so you look at the characters that he created and he embodied and the range. There's one, if you ever get a chance, watch Young Lions. He plays this German soldier in The Young Lions. It's also a good film to also compare acting methods, because there's an ensemble of actors that all come from different schools.
Oh yeah.
So to compare what they're doing. But that was one where even the way he chose to die, to create the death scene of that character, it was very specific, the specificity and the imagination. One of my favorite roles that he played, anytime you get the combo of Brando and Tennessee Williams,
Mm-hmm.
if I was on a desert island, give me Brando and Tennessee Williams, and I'm good. The Fugitive Kind, which came from Tennessee, rewrote it for screen based on his play Orpheus Descending. And there are some moments in there where his inner life expressed through the beautiful poetry of Tennessee, man, that's it right there. That's it. It shaped my vision of the universe because of how you can use words and a human manifestation, bringing those words to life for understanding the human experience with beauty. I don't know if I'm expressing myself well, but
I'm not getting chills or anything.
I'll work harder. To get your nerd on.
Josh?
Yeah, I'm gonna go on the other side of the pond, so to speak. Olivia Coleman. She is a British actress. She's known more so for recent The Favorite. But she's her fame mainly comes from British shows. Broadchurch with David Tennant, Peep Show, Rev. I love watching her. One thing that I always like, because I've directed too, or even just being in an acting class, of like hearing the phrase stop acting, and because you can tell when they're just performing, they're just I'm out there, I'm performing, but some people are just living in the character. And Olivia Coleman, when I watch her, I'm just like, you are living in this character, and I just love watching her work. It's just so real. And like watching interviews with her too, I'm just like, man, you got to be cool too. You got to be just this sweet person. Cool. But she's somebody that I would just love to just spend some time with, and just that's one thing to mention for me personally. Like a lot of my like acting background, I really loved like Shakespeare and like that like quote classical acting, so to speak, or whatever. And British actors, some of them are just so damn good.
That's why they play good Americans too.
Damn
Tennant.
good.
Yeah.
That dude, if you've ever seen his, the recordings of some of his stage pieces, I mean that dude, he can put on a play.
Yeah. He's but he was on my list, had to remove him. So Olivia Coleman, if you just go on IMDb, look at her credits and just watch those things. The Rev, she was in now I can't think of the name of it. She's
in The Lobster.
Yeah, she was in
yeah?
Lobster.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why can't I think of the name of it? This is
Tyrannosaurus.
killing me. Huh?
Tyrannosaurus.
No.
Or Tyrannosaur. The Crown. Fleabag. Les Mis.
Fleabag. It's a good show. Anyway, she's amazing. A lot of times, like a lot of the people that are on my list are often the people that have made me feel while watching them. That have made me I forget that I'm watching something.
Right. You're
instead of
experiencing
witnessing something.
Yeah.
And this is, I like it. Next person.
For me, it's a little bit of both. Makes me get to feel, but also it is a little bit get to witness. You know what I'm saying? Because
Witness me.
I love a great kind of like get them an Academy Award nomination. You know, I'm like, man, they just put in they're like, someone said, if you don't act well, we're going to take away your family. It's like, you know, like they're going hard into paint. And my next pick is Mr. James McAvoy.
Okay.
I was thinking about it on driving from work to here, thinking about it a lot. Like, why should I pick him? And I really thought about, like, in all honesty, like one of my favorite performances from him was in Days of Future Past, where he has to play opposite of Sir Patrick Stewart, playing the same character in two different timelines. And there's a line he says and it's in I don't know if it's in the trailer or not, but it would have been really good. But I don't know if it's too much on the nose. But he says, "I don't want your future." And you know, there's just snot and crying happening. I'm just like, oh my God. Like he's not trying to make a good movie. He's trying to get the Academy Award right here. I see you. Other than that, like outside of it, like my first time ever watching something that he was in was Wanted. You know, where he curved the bullet, you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
it was just like, oh, who's this nerdy guy? And then just seeing him grow into any character was really wonderful. So like, you know, I think most people will remember him right now as from It 2, Chapter 2, but also as Xavier. One thing that I also was just like realized, like, oh, he got it, was in Split with M. Night Shyamalan's film, where he plays a character who has multiple personalities or dissociative.
Yeah.
And you know, at a dime, he switches it and like goes from, you know, headmistress lady to a child, or from a child to like creepy guy. And so it's like, oh man. And I just wanted to see more and more of it. And just realizing like, wow, I've seen him in other films where he's kind of like this cool guy, and you hear his full Scottish come out, and you're like, when
I hear him speak, my man crush just comes
your
out.
pants get tighter. Your pants get a little whiter.
I'm just like, oh, keep speaking to me.
And I've recently heard him on a Sandman audiobook, and he portrays the titular character, Sandman Morpheus. And there are moments where you see this character in the comic, but in the graphic novel form, and you're like, man, this menacing character who has the power of dreams and reality. And then he has moments where he's like, I've been hurt, and no one is giving me justice. And it's like, oh my, I'm so sorry. I don't even see him. I just hear him like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't even mean to. So James McAvoy for me.
I'm so sorry. I failed you. I failed you.
Corey?
So this was an interesting exercise, because I wanted to make sure that I've been learning something from one of the important lessons that we should all be learning over the last few months. You know, and I realized the people that immediately came to mind are white, male, heterosexual, you know, people that reflect, you know, my identity.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, my identity might be partly that, but I should also be able to identify with women, gay people, Black, Hispanic, Asian. So I tried to expand, you know, and even just to women. And then I started to realize, you know what? There are brilliant female contributors to this craft. And I started going through this list: Frances McDormand, and Kathy Bates, and, you know. But what I realized was I was sort of avoiding the obvious choice. But I realized that everybody I was thinking of, Natalie Portman, like everybody, how do they measure up?
Meryl
Streep.
She could be Batman. It'd be the right choice.
It would totally be the right choice, you know? And you look at her range, like even her early work when she first started getting into film. I think there was one before Deer Hunter, but like even her raw, truthful emotionality in Deer Hunter told you that she's like this living gland that can offer herself up. And let's see what she does next. And like shortly thereafter was like a film like Kramer. And then a few years after that, Sophie's Choice, where she could take that truthful emotionality and then craft a different sort of character around it. Bridges from Madison County, The Hours, Julie and Julia. Like,
I mean, I do. I know that
yes.
it's a cheesy movie, but The Devil Wears Prada, she's amazing.
The Devil Wears Prada.
It's not cheesy. That's like what
not
us
at all.
millennials would know about.
That was totally on my list. That was totally on my list of films that, like, if you want to study her craft, you have to look at Devil Wears Prada, or compared to, say, Iron Lady.
Mhm.
So Iron Lady, she Thatcher. It was Thatcher that she was portraying there, right?
Yes.
So there were similarities in that character and the character in Devil Wears Prada, but then the nuance that she brought out in each of those that tended to be a little bit colder in business, and but then she goes to the whole other to a whole other direction, and the vulnerability of the character she played in the Post.
Mhm.
Gosh, like, man, if I could have even a hundredth of a hundredth of what she's contributed to the art form, man, that is something to be celebrated.
Yeah.
It's kind of like it's just an honor to be like, well, did you get the Academy Awards? Like, no, well, I lost to Meryl Streep. It's like, well,
You're good.
Well,
like, hey, that's not bad. That's not bad at all.
you now have that story.
Yeah.
My next person, I only really like. I've been paying since we started Nerd On. It's one of those things that I've started to pay attention to these things, pay attention to preferences, pay attention.
You're welcome.
To. Thank you, Tom.
All because of
all because of you, Tom.
Yes.
Isn't Tom cool? But this actress, I knew that I always enjoyed her and things, but it wasn't. I started watching more and really like paying attention. And Toni Collette.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
She is. That it's like Olivia Coleman. It is. She's a chameleon. It's interesting to see her in things like The Sixth Sense, about a boy that they're kind of damaged people in a sense, very vulnerable. And then to see her in something like there's a recent-ish series on Netflix called Unbelievable, in which she's kind of like she's a strong police detective. I just fucking love watching her. And anything that she does, I'm just like I'm gonna keep saying the thing. I'm just gonna keep repeating myself. It's this realness that again, I'm not watching somebody perform. I'm living in this moment. That just happens to be her talking to her son, and he's telling her that he sees ghosts. Like it's like, yeah, no, I get it, but I'm living in that moment. And I love watching her work, and I huge props to somebody who can. I'm always fascinated to see. I think dialects are an important tool, but they're also very, very dangerous tool in terms of being able to do it correctly or something. And to have somebody that's from Australia be able to do an American accent well. I mean, Hugh Laurie is another person that you just go, holy shit, man. Who are you? Like just like the people that can switch, like I think that's a fascinating skill for actors as well, to be able to do that. And for somebody, because you forget, like I took dialect classes in acting school, and you forget that it's a thing. It's a thing that you do with your mouth, and you grow up doing it in whatever you did, and you forget that it's a dialect, and so I don't know, I love Toni Collette and anything that she does. Next.
For me, this one is I'm not gonna do any foreplay with this. It's Anne Hathaway.
Sure.
I love Anne Hathaway, and I'll be honest, I think I really started liking her or noticing her as an actor for the wrong reasons. I was a child or I was a teenager, and I thought she was hot.
It's cool, man. We've all been there.
It's good. It's good.
But I think after seeing her in the Diaries, and then later on in Havoc, where she completely made a complete left turn, whatever the right turn she took it so she could be like, I am not that Disney character. I am my own self. I'm an actor. I'm like, you know what? Props to you, but also that was great for a kid like me. But then seeing her in later works, and I'm glad that Corey, you brought up Devil's Wear Prada, because I thought about her in that as well, and I was just like, there is something really well written about the character, and especially just the opening sequence of these two diametrically opposed characters who have just different ways of looking at life, and you get the best yin and yang with those two characters, and obviously, you know, my affinity towards Batman, but what I kind of really solidified, like, am I crazy to like her? I feel like the social media of the world, they're like just hating on her for no reason. And then I saw Les Mis, and then that one take, and I was like,
that one take.
Guys, we cannot sleep on this.
Oh man!
And I saw that. I was like,
yeah.
I remember watching.
I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah, I said, I'm done. I couldn't leave the theater right now. I would have been just as entertained, because you gave me everything that this, you know, this ticket was worth. And I was like, I'm done. And she won the award for that. And I was like, yes, you deserve it. And I'm you know,
I'm out.
harmony could
I'm
be
done.
achieved. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, Anne Hathaway for the win.
Dig it.
Corey, your last one, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Our last round.
Is that my last one? No, I just have to kind of pick up on what you were saying. When as a young actor, I was really torn, because I was being cast in these musicals, but I just hated the style, because I loved Tennessee Williams and Chekhov and Shakespeare, and
I'm a musical guy
stuff.
too, so
yeah. But it was a very different thing. When you're doing Rodgers and Hammerstein, it's a very different thing than when you're doing Tennessee Williams or Odette.
Oh yeah.
You know?
But
so
I mean, I would
ability,
I would argue that it's a style. But I think that there should be, because I took a lot of musical theater. That was kind of my track too. Like it was, I wanted to be in musicals as well. And a song should be like a monologue. You should be able to present the song. It may not, even if you listen to it, like, oh, it's very musical, or it's almost, some songs are cheesy and catchy, but it's like, you should be able to present that song as a monologue.
Well, to your point, that's exactly what I was driving to, is her performance there. She was able to get the best and the truest of pure acting and a virtuoso level of musicianship in that song. It was everything. That's one of my favorite film moments too. If we were going to do film moments, that's definitely in the top 10. That one take, just and she, I think she said that was the third take they did. She was ready to do like 100 more, but that was the third take she did. Anyway, my fifth is, and not in this order, but like Denzel would have been on the list, but
we get it.
But Forrest Whitaker.
Oh, yeah.
When he first got started, you go from Fast Times. Remember the character he played in Color of Money? It was a bit part, but he was a hustler that showed up in a couple different scenes, and he pulled that, like, because he had to play a guy that was playing a guy, you know, and he had truthful, emotional life, and he got, you know, he was a pool player, you know, and you go, but I was a sucker for Bird. I mean, you give me Charlie Parker, you give me Clint Eastwood directing, you know, and then you take characters like that, that sort of introverted, sensitive creature, and then you bring him to Last King of Scotland. Man, talk about range. That dude has some range, and he's truthful, and he's creative, and he's imaginative and sensitive and powerful, and he's able to bring all of it and pour it into those characters.
I think when I got introduced to him was in Panic Room.
Yeah.
And like seeing that, you know, he comes in first as an antagonistic force, and then seeing the turn and the growth with the character, and seeing like how the different events play out, you're like, wow. Like, so not only were you providing this piece in the film, you were also adding several layers to it as well. So it's I know what you're talking about of like, you're pouring so much more than I think that sometimes it was even written for.
Yeah. And I mean, I figured you guys would be into the whole Rogue One Black Panther thing.
But honestly, I think what kept him in my mind a lot of times were like these, like we're talking about, like not these huge films. Like I think another one was for me was Street Kings.
Yeah.
And I absolutely loved it where there's a moment at the end, I'm not going to spoil it, but he's pleading with the protagonist of saying like, this is what we need. This is what it is. And you're like, and it was one of those moments like, he's not trying to make the movie. He's trying to make the Oscar, So I was like, it's wonderful. And it's not in the way where it's trying to take away from other actors. We're talking about like collaborative, nature of acting, but it's that sense of like, this is the scene,
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Josh?
So my last one.
Last one,
really
baby.
hard. This is so hard. I do because this. Okay, I'm just gonna do an honorable mention, and I'm just.
Oh my gosh,
she's not in much,
but he's cheating
all the time.
I am cheating.
Every time.
It's an honorable mention, but I think that she needs to be known. Jodie Comer, who is on Killing Eve. She plays the main antagonist, Villanelle. Watch Killing Eve. She is fucking incredible. Fucking incredible. Anyway, so my last pick for this list, I chose this one because there's a story to this. I was young and I was dumb and I couldn't represent the artist that this person is, that I believe now. I would not watch one of his movies. I just refused to. I was young and dumb.
What changed?
I realized how good he is. Leonardo DiCaprio.
Okay.
All right. So which
him his
film,
Oscar.
which was your first film of his?
What's Eating Gilbert Grape?
Oh,
yes. That will enter you into the whole.
The true, like, now that I am cultured and informed, I look back and it was one of my favorite movies growing up. And I don't know what it was. I think maybe it was like kind of the teeny bopper era of like, he was just kind of like a kid on a magazine kind of thing. A good looking dude on a magazine. And so it's like, I didn't really appreciate it.
Tiger Beat, you're disqualified.
Tiger
growing pains, man. Growing
if
pains.
there is a pull out poster in a magazine, you're disqualified. George Clooney? No. So, I mean, things like Catch Me If You Can, what we already mentioned, Gangs of New York, fucking
Django.
The Wolf of Wall Street.
The
Departed.
Yeah.
Like
Departed.
things like,
The Departed.
The Departed.
That's how they say it. I'm sorry.
The Departed.
The Departed. What was the one that he did?
Shutter Island?
The Frontiersman.
Revenant?
The Revenant.
Oh.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the one that got him.
That finally.
Yeah.
It was a change recently. It's kind of like, I also realized that I really like Matthew McConaughey. I was watching a movie and I'm like,
all right.
wait. Like if you watch the Dallas Buyers Club, you're like,
yeah, he's good.
Yeah.
He's good.
Where have I been?
Yeah.
Oh, I've been under a rock. Got it. But Leo's one of those. I was just like, I was watching, I forget what I was watching, but I was like, wait a minute. Where have I been? And so I started watching more. I think Bonnie and I, we went on this like whole Leo thing. Like even back to Titanic. Like you're just like, I am so dumb. I'm so dumb.
Yeah.
Leo, I know that you're watching. I apologize for my stupidity. I respect you. You can reach us, nerdonthepodcast at gmail.com.
Did you have a similar epiphany for Brad Pitt?
Yes. That was another person that I was like, I'm so dumb.
Right. Yeah. I mean, how do you watch? What was that? Oh, shit.
Even watching something like Inglourious Bastards, where you're like,
we can get some Nazis.
I mean, here's the thing. Because we could have done character actors too. Like we could have done something like Brad Pitt to be able to. No, I didn't. He's not on my list, but
I was going to say, I feel like
list.
we're just going to add more people.
We're just going to
keep acting people, but Brad Pitt has such a range as well that you're just like, to be able to see something like that, like Inglorious Bastards or Burn After Reading, or like these kinds of things where you're just like, it's such character. Seven.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So Leo, like he earned a place when I just realized I was like, oh my God, I'm a Leo fan. Young me is like, you failed me. And I look back at myself and go, it's okay. It's okay.
In some connective tissue, talking about Leo and then also talking about my last pick with Anne Hathaway. Also, I always have to give a big props to whoever handles Christopher Nolan dialogue. Because those are just like long blocks of exposition, right? And if you're able to tell it in such a way that's entertaining, then props to you. But also with that sense of with McConaughey, Anne Hathaway, I remember she having a interview, like it was one of those actor on actor interviews with Matthew McConaughey, and she was saying how she knew he was going to win an Academy Award, and it wasn't for Dallas Buyers Club. She knew he was going to win because of his performance in Magic Mike. She said the reconnaissance is going to happen, and he's going to win the Academy Award. And so it's just so funny that we brought it up. I was like, yeah, that I remember this specific conversation. But for my fifth and last actor that I will pick, who is not the last in any list, but just the last person I choose to mention, someone again who is a little bit more, I think, becoming bigger in the mainstream. But someone I picked up pretty recently. It wasn't like someone like Christian Bale when I was like a kid. I was like, oh my God. But Daniel Kaluuya. And he, first time I watched him, so if you don't know who he is, you've seen him in Black Panther. He's Okoye's significant other. He leads the army. He was in Get Out, the lead actor for Get Out. He is the lead actor in Queen and Slim.
British actor, of course.
British actor. Black dude. And the first thing that I ever saw him in was in Black Mirror, and it was episode 2 of season 1. And it's if you know the episode, it's the episode with the bikes, and that episode creeps a lot of my friends out. But in that episode, it gave me this character who has this level of like apathy that this is reality and it's dystopian. And I loved it. And you see him like learn how like, okay, there's someone I care about, something bad's happening to them, I have to do something. And then at the very end leaves you with this level of resignation of like, everything's screwed. And I think, Twitter is wonderful and terrible at the same time, but they have, created that wonderful meme of like, don't get in a relationship with this guy. You will die or something bad will happen because of the films that he's been in. And most recently, the thing I saw him in was in Queen and Slim. And it is about, 2 Black people who are on the run after an incident with the police. And that film, because of both actors in part, but since I'm picking Daniel Kaluuya, I walked away the most upset in the way that I was angry and I wanted to cry. Because it was such this moment of like, you take these characters who have nothing to do. It was pretty much like Bonnie and Clyde. Like it was like, I don't know why I should care about these characters. But then when you're on the journey, you're on the journey. And this was like the Bonnie and Clyde of this generation, where it's like they have no reason to be connected, but then because of circumstance, they are. And they do make those decisions where they can turn back, but they don't. And at the very end, you're left with the exact same feeling of Bonnie and Clyde, which is just like, oh man, life is tough and violent. And it's brutal and bloody. And Daniel Kaluuya, and the coming film at the time of this recording is going to be Judas and the Black Messiah, and I'm really excited for that one. So, that rounds out all top 5 for everybody.
Top five.
Also, Corey, I hate you again for making us do this. This was really hard. This was so
I put it on it. I put the.
We could have talked about poker, guys. We could have
talked about poker. He even threw out politics, really good, right? And I was like, ooh.
Let's do it.
It'll be an after dark episode.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Corey. This has been a lot of fun. Before we head into the goodbyes and whatnot, tell our audience where they can find you. Like your Trailer Geeks and Teaser Gods is your podcast. Tell everybody about it, where they can find it.
Or you personally.
Yeah, it's on all podcast apps. So if you just type in Trailer Geeks and Teaser Gods, You'll find it on Apple and Spotify and you Google and everywhere you get your podcasts. We're on most of the major social platforms, but we're not as active on Twitter and IG there. But we just produced our second show. I'm not the host on it, but Both Sides of the Ball is doing really important work. Bo Van Pelt and Pharrell Evans are these great hosts. Bo is a professional golfer on the PGA Tour.
Whoa.
Pharrell is a brilliant writer and academic, and they're buddies. Bo is a country boy who lives in Tulsa, and Pharrell is a black dude who lives in Harlem. Pharrell's the academic and writer, and Bo is a professional athlete, and yet they're good buds. So they talk about golf. That's their thing. Pharrell's written for SI and ESPN magazine, and so they obviously talk about golf, but they talk about culture and the intersection
Nice.
of golf and sports and culture. So look up Both Sides of the Ball as well. There's a lot of great conversations happening there.
That's awesome.
Nice. Yeah, everybody at home, thank you so much for listening. Reach out to us. Let us know your top 5 actors or actresses. We would love to know that. Our DMs are open, so slip and slide into those. But if you are new to Nerd On, thank you. Thanks for stopping by. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching if you are on YouTube. Check out our website, nerdon.tv. It has all of the information, all the linky links to everything that we do, and we do a lot. The podcast is everywhere. Apple Podcast. You can even watch it on YouTube, iHeart, Spotify. It's everywhere.
Once you subscribe, it'll also be on your phone.
Yeah, exactly. Stop by, rate and review us. Those reviews, they not only help us grow, but they also they make us feel great. We share them within the group. It's good feedback. It's good stuff. Stop by that YouTube. We've got 2 channels, so check that out. And our Twitch, we are streaming often. And as I said at the top, do consider joining the Nerd On Nation. It does allow us to grow and be the best that we can be, and to make good content. And that's what we want to do. We want to make good content for you. And check out our Discord, nerdon.tv/Discord. Join the community. It's a really cool place to be. You can talk anywhere from sports to movies to comic books. The gamut is wide. It's a good time. So that's it. That is all the final housekeeping. Thank you so much. You know the drill. As always, Nerd On.
Nerd On.
Ending broadcast.